The Felon, Epstein, Putin, Musk, some other world leaders, and human trafficking. Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First of all, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel, to everybody who watches the videos, likes the videos, and comments on the videos. If you watch the videos and you're not subscribed, I'd really encourage you to subscribe. I think it's only about 20% of the people that watch the videos are actually subscribed to the channel. And if you've given money to the channel, huge thank you, either through the super thanks, the buy me a coffee or Venmo, all greatly appreciated. Looking at some more tarot decks to purchase, I'll probably put out a poll soon. And if you haven't checked out my second channel, there's a link to that in the channel description of this channel. So, okay. So I have thought long and hard about doing this video. And those of you that have been around long enough know that I have a little bit of mixed emotions about talking about these things for a variety of reasons. And the hope is that when I put forward a video, it helps explain something. And I think this might help explain something. So in that case, I think it's worth doing. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what's actually going on an individual level because I just think that's not of use. So there's that. So let's start out, and we're going to kind of let the cards guide us into. I have a list of questions next to me over here, but we'll let the cards guide us in the order that they go, and whether this turns out to be one video or part one of two videos, because I think it's a pretty detailed story. Now, I'm probably going to repeat some of the questions I've covered in the past, but I don't think that's necessarily that bad just because when I posted those videos, we probably had 1/4 the number of subscribers that we have now. So revisiting those, I think, is okay. So let's first ask the question, does Vladimir Putin possess information on the felon with regards to human trafficking? Does Putin possess information on the felon with regards to human trafficking? I'm getting a big yes, but let's see what the cards say. This topic is very distressing, so if you hear that in my voice, that's why. But I do think it explains a lot if we get to the bottom of this. Yeah. The felon's in a very defensive posture. He's very nervous, very anxious, scared even perhaps that this information might come out. Because if it does, he knows that it's the end. He'll be living a life of poverty, if not imprisonment. And at least, even if that didn't happen, his reputation would be completely ruined. And to him, that is probably the biggest wealth that he has is his name. Now, I know for a lot of people on this channel, it means absolutely nothing, but negative connotations. But He doesn't see that way. His problem is there's a spy, right? There's somebody that knows these things besides Putin. And we'll get to who I think that is in a minute. In the past, we had consistency and we had logic. And what this is, in my opinion, is this is like the old guard and kind of a gentleman's agreement that these things could go on and we wouldn't talk about them. It's very similar to the scandals within the Catholic Church. How long did they last before they actually came forward? Right? It took some brave individuals coming forward. It's about partnerships and relationships with people that share the same predilection. The near-term outcome, we get anxiety. We get the King of Swords. Logic comes to mind. Um, I think Putin is very calculating with what he's doing with this information. I don't think he's overplaying his hand, but he's not underplaying it either. I think Putin actually is probably very, very smart. He's got the goods. He's got everything he needs to bring the felon down, and the felon knows it. And that's part of the reason why we see such bizarre actions towards Russia. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a movement to remove sanctions soon. And really, that is what the ceasefire deal is about, is improving economic conditions in Russia. Because, Russia's not telling the truth about what's going on inside Russia. Let's just put it that way. There's a lot of heartache going on and a lot of poverty that didn't used to be there. And kind of a generation of young men that no longer exist. The hopes and fears we get justice. The hope is that there will be justice on these topics. The fear is that there won't be. Makes perfect sense. Ultimately, it comes down to loss. And this is why I think it's such a heavy energy to read on this and why I've kind of been avoiding it, even though several people have asked me over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I do have videos on here about blackmail and stuff, but um, the overall feel to this is going to be lost for everyone. Everyone loses at the end. There is no winners in this game. This is this is the complete and utter downfall for the felon. But I think it's also the complete and utter downfall for Vladimir Putin. I think both are true. And we get the Queen of Wands. Regardless of our politics, people are very passionate when it comes to the safety of children. This issue doesn't require loyalty to party. And that's why it's so fearful on the felon's part, and why he's willing to go to all these links and to justify it and twist it and bring the cult along um, as long as he can. We get the high priestess underneath. There's just things we can't see that are going to come to the surface. And in some ways, these things that we can't see might be for our own protection for right now, but they will be seen eventually. We get the Eight of Cups, walking away from things that no longer serve us. This is the people walking away from the felon. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month. Perhaps sometime in late summer, something along those lines. And we get temperance, a return to moderation, a return to kind of morality, whatever morality means to you. Now, that's not the way, that word was demonized and used against people in the 80s and the 90s. That's not what I'm talking about. There's not going to be a demonization of different faiths or different lifestyles or different choices. It's just going to be a return to decency. Decency probably would have been a better word than morality. So does Vladimir Putin have dirt on the felon? You know, without a doubt. How else can you explain it? Why suddenly is the US cozying up to to Russia? And it's at great cost. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now, here's where I think things get a little bit more complicated. So, did Elon Musk use his Starlink satellites to gain access to the dirt on the felon? So if you look back in the beginning of the Putin's invasion, Starlink satellites would suddenly go down over Ukraine, and then there'd be a big attack. And a lot of communication were relying on those satellites, and they would suddenly just go offline, and then there would be an attack. So let's ask the question, were these turning on and off of Starlink satellites over Ukraine a way of paying for dirt on the phone? It's a way of paying for dirt. I see the Six of Pentacles in the water, which is about repayments of loans and debts, giving and receiving of money. Be curious to see if that pops out of the cards. We get the Chariot cards. This is a yes card, but this is also the card that I have just come to associate with trafficking. You know, Chariot, trafficking kind of makes sense. So the answer is yes. The problem, and this is kind of interesting, but I had sensed this as well. The problem with doing this exchange is that Musk knew at the time that this was a bad deal for his workers, for his shareholders, and for everything, because he was going to use this information to get power in the US. And so he's going to walk away from private world and try to get into the government. And he's succeeded so far. Now, how long he lasts in the government, we'll see. And it has been terrible for his shareholders. Three people, money or things of value being exchanged. Musk, Putin, the felon. The Putin and Musk have something of value to the felon to where they can basically control him like a puppet because he has no choice. The information is beyond damaging. It's probably what glimpses I've got on it before I've kind of turned away and protected myself is it's worse than you could possibly imagine. It is way worse than what you could possibly even imagine. In the past, Musk was a little bit more moderate. He operated slightly in that realm, and things started to change I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe. I mean, you know, Tesla used to be kind of this cool cult stock. All the young people wanted it. It's not really that way anymore. I mean, he even appeared on an episode of The Big Bang Theory, right? I mean, he wasn't thought to be this crazy, misogynistic, and racist person at the time. Now, he probably always was, but that time appearing moderate is in the past. Now he's sort of, the phrase "make your bed and lie in it" kind of came to mind when I pulled the Eight of Swords. Is he's in this situation and he doesn't really have a way out. Like, I don't think he had a game plan. Like I've said many times, I don't think he's actually all that smart. Um, so he feels trapped. He feels trapped that he has this information and that he has basically worked to get the felon elected using his platform Twitter and other means to spread a whole bunch of disinformation to voters so that they couldn't make an informed decision. And now he just is sitting there and he's thinking, was it really worth it? I think he has some regrets. The near term future, though, we get the Page of Pentacles. We get something coming forward, some sort of piece of information, whether it's an exchange of money or something that's going to happen. All three of them are teetering on the wheel of fortune. The wheels of fate are going to turn one way or another. And it doesn't feel like they're going to turn in their favor. We'll read on that later, but it does feel like they're standing on a precipice, not knowing whether they're going to fall. We get judgment. People are going to judge these three individuals very harshly, along with others. There are more than just them, but these are the three main players. And the judgment is going to be very harsh. The hopes and fears are the hopes is that they can get away with it. This is the card of deception. They hope that they can deceive and that they can get away with it. They fear they cannot. We, on the other hand, probably hope that they cannot get away with it and fear that they can. Yeah, the outcome, we get bombshells and surprises, the Page of Cups. What we once thought was up is now down. We get the King of Swords. Um, a very clear-cut plan will come into place. And we get strength. And I think I pointed this out in another reading that this lamb sometimes, it had never popped up this way before, but it just pops up as like, this is the sacrificial lamb. And it's like the information about the sacrificial lamb is what is giving him strength. That's what's propping him up. That's why he, has a position. But the truth is coming. The Ace of Swords. I can't tell you when that is, but we can try to narrow it down a bit. We get the Five of Pentacles. After the truth comes just complete and utter destruction of reputation, possibly even financial destruction. Why? Because the Hierophant gets involved. The Hierophant's the courts and the governments, maybe even perhaps governments that, how to say, other governments, not necessarily the US government, other governments. And there'll be a lot of support for going after them. And it will be them just completely wounded in battle. So, does Musk have information on the felon? Yes. Did he get it from Putin? Yes. The question is, where did Putin get it from? This is where I think things get a little bit tricky and perhaps a little bit worky. First of all, I do want to take some time here to say, these are predictions. They could be wrong. They could be right. Uh, I have a pretty good track record of being right, and I am right way more than I am wrong. But they're still just predictions. So they may come to pass, they may not come to pass. They're definitely things we should not act on. This is, for entertainment value only. The expression. Let's ask the question here. Somebody told me I was crazy when I first proposed this. But put yourself, well, don't do that, but I was going to say put yourself in Jeffrey Epstein's shoes, but don't do that. So Epstein gets arrested, charged with crimes in Florida, gets a sweetheart deal. That gets revealed, right? The labor secretary, I believe, had to resign his cabinet position because he was part of the prosecutors that gave Epstein this really sweetheart deal. Epstein's out doing his thing, and then Epstein magically gets arrested while the felon is still president. Pretty sure I have that correct. And Epstein dies before while the felon's still president as well. That's right, because Bill Barr visited. Okay. This is the part where one person told me I was crazy, but this seems like from the visions I've gotten, from the cards I've thrown, this is what feels like what had happened. Epstein panics, doesn't want to spend his whole life in prison, tries to kind of buy a pardon from the felon, thinking, if the felon wins a second term, no big deal. He can pardon me and nobody could do anything about it because, we don't have another election. And he was going to do that through blackmail. Now, the problem with that, direct blackmail, was that if you're in prison, you don't have access to things. You maybe get people to have access for them, but who can you trust? And of course, there's probably incriminating evidence about him on there as well. And so what I think happened is Epstein somehow managed to give dirt on the felon to Vladimir Putin in exchange for pressuring the felon to pardon Epstein and um, and then what's in it for Putin is Putin has dirt so he can control and negotiate an end to the conflict in Ukraine or his invasion of Ukraine, or he could just use it to get things from the US sanctions removed, whatever. But that's only going to work if the felon is president. So I correct in this assumption that, and I know Epstein is Jewish and of a line that has a long history of hating people in Russia, but when your life's at stake, you do crazy things. And if you're willing to do the crazy things that they're guilty, if you're willing to really do crazy things, I don't think, you know, if you break one norm, you'll break any norm. So I don't put much stock into that. Are we right? Did Epstein barter dirt on the felon in exchange for Putin pressuring the felon to pardon Epstein? Yeah, he was trying to find an escape, right? Epstein knew he was going to prison. This was not a surprise. He knew people were getting ready to arrest him. And the challenge is, how do you get out of it? You can't win the court case, right? There's not going to be a plea bargain this time. Victory will elude you at Six of Wands in the challenge position, right? He knew there was no way to get victory. But he knew he had a lot of information about the chariot. He had a lot of dirt to give to Putin about the felon in regards to this chariot energy. And, you know, this is our card for trafficking, right? So I'm just going to say chariot energy so I don't have to say that word. The past, he had control over a lot of things in the past. He had dirt over a lot of people. It wasn't like the felon was the only one that he was, potentially blackmailing. I don't think he actually blackmailed the felon. I think he thought about it and then thought he wasn't in a position at the time that he was going to get arrested to do it. So he had to have somebody else doing it. Now, what the connection to Putin is exactly and how that information was relayed, that's a little bit murky for me, but I think that's what happened because he was persistent about finding somebody. He had the strength and the persistency to find somebody to do this dirty work for him. Like he just did. He just thought this is the only way out. And, it's not like he's sitting there and going to feel remorseful. That didn't seem like Epstein's MO. He wasn't remorseful the first time he was arrested. He showed no remorse whatsoever at any point in time that I'm aware of. So the only thing that he can do is get out of prison. The only way he can get out of prison is to somehow, buy himself a pardon through the presidency and perhaps through some governorships. We'll get into that later. The near-term outcome is unlikely partnerships, the lover's card. This is completely on point with what I'm saying. Putin and Epstein getting together to accomplish something it seems like an unlikely partnership. And it is, but that is what was done. Why? Epstein wanted to avoid prison, the Eight of Swords, confinement. He wanted to avoid that, at least for as much as he could. He wanted his wish of freedom granted, the Nine of Cups wish fulfillment. He thought this was a plausible route to go. Now, whether it was plausible or not is a different story altogether. The hopes and fears is temperance, a return to normalcy, or in Jeffrey Epstein's twisted mind, what normalcy meant to him. That was his hope. And his fears, he wouldn't get that. But ultimately, what goes on is we get the moon card. There were things that he hadn't thought through because it was done out of an act of desperation. It was probably done fairly quickly. I don't think there was much time to spare. There were things that he couldn't see. And big thing that he couldn't see at the time was the felon losing the 2020 election. And so they moved forward with this deceit and this deception, Seven of Swords, ready for the next step. But ultimately, Putin is standing here with the five swords, and Epstein's in the back there, wounded. Putin got all the goods, Epstein got nothing. We all know what happened to him. And I have a reading on that as well. It's interesting that Musk comes up underneath. He might have been a gateway between them all at the time. It's possible. Having everything that you need, he had all the proper communication channels to make this work. And he wanted to avoid judgment. He wanted to avoid this fiery new beginning. And I talked about this once in a reading. Sometimes this card can feel really hot. And now I'm not a big believer in heaven and hell, but make it what you want, a new start that feels really, really hot. Okay, so Epstein gives the dirt to Putin in exchange for the felon. That Putin would pressure the felon to somehow get Epstein out of jail, somehow manipulate the system. It might not have been an exact pardon, but perhaps get the right judges there, some sort of twisting to where he doesn't spend his whole life in prison. Okay. So that's where we're at, is Putin's got dirt on the felon. Musk has dirt on the felon. Directly or indirectly, directly for Putin, the dirt came from Epstein and then indirectly went to Musk. I don't think it went directly to Musk, although it could have gone through Musk. I don't think it's really important what the directions of the were. The important part is that Putin has the dirt. And now here's where things start to fall apart. People think, and maybe correctly so, why wouldn't the felon concede to Joe Biden and then just run for president again? Was it because he was kind of told not to? That could have been an ego play, certainly. Could have been the felon's ego at play, couldn't admit that he lost. But I don't think so. At the time, I thought so. I don't think so anymore. I think this was actually the beginning of Putin's terror on US citizens. And the beginning, well, maybe not the beginning, but certainly a big part near the beginning of Russia taking influence over United States lawmakers. So let's just ask this. Was Trump not conceding the 2020 election A direct order from. It's kind of, well, we'll look at them, but they're meant to be on top. Fighting card for Joe Biden in the cups and moving away from troubled waters. Maybe temperance again. The fear, so that's a yes card, but the fear was that if the government went back to acting in a normal manner, some of these things would be discovered. Now it turned out we got Merrick Garland as Attorney General and everything just went to nowhere. The challenge for them was to keep this emotionally new beginning contained, and they did somewhat. I think it went basically as planned. This is the point where it became very clear that everybody had to march the same line. All the ants are marching one by one, but it's a heavy burden to bear. And you can see it in some people's faces. Some people show it better than others. Marco Rubio, for example, is very burdened, but he's probably also not in on all the information. So, or at least I don't sense that he is. The strength to control the own situation is in the past. He has no power anymore. So the play was to usurp power. And so he sends out a message to his minions, the Page of Pentacles. Come to DC on January 6th. It will be wild. See you there. It will be wild. In the near-term future, we get the Knight of Cups, an emotional message coming forward. This is a plea to the masses to come forward. We get the Page of Wands. We get another message. This one a little bit more fiery. We're struggling here. You're not going to have a country anymore if you let this happen. This is what happens when you have a stolen election. All those quotes from him were very much designed to send a message, and a message to inflame passion. And now, while this person rappelling down just another rock climber kind of has the appearance of some military faction, right? Backpack. We get the world, the end of the cycle. The end of the cycle is nearing, right? The presidency is almost over on January 20th. And Putin has inserted himself into the system, sticking his leg through the veil, so to speak, putting his 2 cents in on what should happen. Nope, in Pierce, we get the Moon card. This is things coming to the surface. This is the fear. The fear is that it will be revealed that the dogs were making the decisions, and the felon really was basically like an invalid at the hands of Putin, doing exactly what he wanted. Was the felon complicit in January 6th? Of course. Was it was there more going on than just him trying to stay in power? I think so. We get the lovers, unlikely partnerships again. The felon with Putin. We get judgment. The people spoke, the felon lost. And we get the mob. Here they are coming to the Capitol on January 6th. I'm sorry, the sun's a little bit changed its position. We get the mob, the people with the torches. They're coming. It's only later that they realize that maybe they shouldn't have been there. So was Putin behind the ordering of January 6th? I think so. I mean, there are six major arcanas here, seven major arcanas here out of the 12 cards on the table. And here's the card for the felon, the King of Pentacles. And then things just got way out of hand. Things started moving very quickly. Guardrails got destroyed. The Nine of Wands is going to be an important card for the next 6 months. Guardrails. So all of this is so that he can stay president. And, well, let me rephrase that. Not exactly. Either he can stay president or they can create so much division that the Justice Department would be consumed with investigating other things rather than this stuff. And that's exactly what happened. The Justice Department started pursuing all of these other things related to January 6th, that things kind of went by the wayside. Well, then after it became clear to Putin and to the felon, Jeffrey Epstein is found unalived. No. Why is that? So Putin told the felon, I think, and again, these are predictions. They could be right, they could be wrong. I think the felon was told by Putin, you run again. Stay in the news. You run again. Otherwise, Putin couldn't cash in on the blackmail. And yet there was another problem. Epstein could spill the beans. So, two problems. One, Putin wants to cash in on the blackmail. And two, Jeffrey Epstein is now a huge liability. Is Putin and the felon behind the unaliving Epstein? I've read on this before. Maybe not assigning who maybe was behind it. But the outcome was the hanged man. The hanged man's in the water. That's why I mentioned it. While everybody's kind of beating the drums on the MAGA side, beating the drums, woohoo, we got to defend our guy. Democrats are beating the drums, yay, yay, we won. There's somebody out there that is willing to do harm as a spy, so to speak, spy on the camp Page of Swords. Not sure who that is, not sure that it's relevant, to be honest with you. Who gave the orders more relevant? Overseas influence. The Two of Pentacles came from overseas. In the past, the new beginning they had been thinking of, it's gone, disappeared. The felon's no longer in charge, or is about to no longer be in charge. They're worried about the truth. Epstein possesses the truth, possesses everything that's gone on. There's a huge burden to bear, not for Epstein, but for the people that are worried about the truth. The people that would be directly affected by this coming forward. It would ruin their families. It would ruin their reputations. It would ruin everything. It'd be the end. Tens are ends, right? So they go along and they plant a seed of, hey, if this guy isn't around anymore, problem solved. And they have the ability to do it, or at least they're hoping they do. And they're willing to sacrifice somebody in the midst of doing it. Now, Epstein could be the sacrificial lamb, also could be the person who actually did the act of helping to unalive him, who's never been caught, but I don't think is a high-ranking official. They're all acting out of this illusion, delusioned, addicted state. They're acting out of fear because they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. And they're trying to chase it down before it's too late. Right? The motorcycle's out ahead, the Knight of Swords. They're trying to chase down the information before it's too late, before anybody else knows. Because they know the reaction would be quick and one of passion and would be completely devastating. And there it is. I mean, there it is. That's what they did. The Hanged Man. So, problem solved. Wishes fulfilled. Lots of messages were relayed to make it happen. Ultimately, they had everything they needed. And they were able to manipulate the guardrails, manipulate the government, manipulate the courts, the Hierophant. And now Epstein's out of the picture. So that's the beginning of the story. Let's recap a little bit. This is, again, for entertainment purposes only. Epstein has dirt on the phone. Epstein, after already getting one deal and staying out of prison, knows he's about to be arrested. Passes dirt to Putin in the hopes that that can somehow be used to influence the felon into getting Epstein out of prison. Elon Musk gets involved. Either does these things in exchange for Putin to get the dirt, or maybe was an intermediary. Not quite sure where he fits into this picture, but he has some odd behaviors. Let's just put it that way. What do you do when you know somebody has all the dirt, has all the goods to tell, probably has ways of telling it too, probably has all the transactions logged? He was meticulous. You know, people thought that he was videotaping everything. I think he probably was. What do you do when this person's facing a life in prison, has nothing to lose at all at this point, could easily spill the beans implicating a whole bunch of people. What do? They take care of the problem. So Putin controlling Trump, Musk controlling Trump the felon. And that is where we are today. The story on what is going on today with respect to this topic is still going on. And we'll get to that, but I think that can wait till next time. This video is pretty long. So, all right. I'll make part 2 soon. Thank you.